Hello and welcome to another Tattered Cover Live event. For those that don't know, Tattered Cover is an independent bookstore in Denver, but we serve readers all over. You can order from us on our website, tatteredcover.com. You can access closed captioning for tonight's event on the bottom right. You can type your questions in the chat, and I will put a link to the book in the chat as well. Tonight, we welcome Suzanne Enoch to celebrate her book, Something in the Air. Moderating is Evie Dunmore. Evie Dunmore wrote her US Today best-selling series inspired by the magical scenery of Oxford and her passion for romance, women pioneers, and all things Victorian. In her civilian life, she is a consultant with an MSc in diplomacy from Oxford. Evie lives in Berlin and pours her fascination with 19th century Britain into her writing. Learn more online at eviedunmore.com. Please welcome Evie Dunmore. Suzanne is a native and current resident of Southern California. Suzanne Enoch loves movies almost as much as she loves books, with a special place in her heart for anything Star Wars. She has written more than 40 Regency novels and historical romances, which are regularly found on the New York Times bestseller list. Some of these include The Scandalous Brides, No Ordinary Hero, Lessons in Love, and the Wild Wicked Highlanders series. When she is not busily working on her next book, Suzanne likes to contemplate interesting phenomena, like how the 3 guppies in her aquarium became 161 guppies in 5 months. Please welcome Suzanne Enoch.
Ta-da!
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Evie.
How are you doing on your big launch day today?
I'm good. I'm obsessively checking my numbers to see if they go up and down on Amazon, because that's the only way I can.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's horrible. I think I would have learned by now, but I have not.
I was about to ask 40 novels, and you're still doing that. So it doesn't actually become any less stressful then, does it?
It does not. It's crazy, but no. You would think it would, and I would be jaded or something, but no. And I still like to, when my cover comes in the mail, or it comes on the printer, I still have to look at it and touch it, and it's crazy, but yeah.
Actually, it's a good thing though, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, and with your new book, Something in the Air, actually you do have a couple of firsts, if I understand that right. So, and that's one thing that I noticed, like I've read some of your older works in the past, and this new one now has a completely different look from the old books. So you got one of the illustrated covers. How did you like that? How do you feel about that?
Yeah,
there it is.
So pretty. Yeah, it is. I know cartoon covers have been out there for a while, and there are a lot of pros and cons feeling about it, but it's my first cartoon cover, and I really like it. I think it's playful, and it kind of matches the tone of the book really well. I'm not sure it would work for a gothic, angsty novel, but I mean, I guess it depends on the execution, but for me, it's perfect. And it's my first trade paperback too. So yeah, still new things, old dogs, still new tricks.
Congratulations again. No, and so yeah, you want to tell us a little bit about the book, about Emmeline and William?
Well, sure. Because I kind of did a change of genre a little bit, like a sidestep. Instead of a straight historical romance, this is more of a historical romantic comedy. So I wanted to go a little big. Everything's a little exaggerated. You know, the emotions are exaggerated, the disasters that happen are a little exaggerated. Because for me, that feels like kind of what love is. It exaggerates everything. And this book is kind of, to me, it's about what love is, as much as it is a love story. A funny one, because I also find love hilarious and weird. And people do weird things when they're in love and first love and all that. So yeah, I spent my time watching a lot of Cary Grant movies from the 30s and kind of getting that quick dialogue going, and the kind of different points of view of what's going on. And I probably did, I don't know, 8 or 10 different character points of view in this story. Hopefully made it clear who was talking when, but because it's really about all of them, the servants, the kids, and the hero and heroine, I wanted everybody's input a little bit, because everybody comes at it from their own angle. And I wanted to describe that.
Yeah, I did notice that there was more, there were more points of views than in the regular romance. You know, the standard is kind of having one point of view from the heroine usually, or you have the changing point of view between hero and heroine. But yeah, there was definitely more points of views in your book. And so you mentioned Cary Grant as an inspiration, but I honestly, it reminded me more of a Fair Lady in a way, like a Fair Lady retelling. Just
thank you. Yeah,
you switch them out. Yeah, you switched Eliza out for the children. So what was the inspiration behind that, or for that?
I was just thinking, what if we're in historical England during the Regency, what is a perfect marriage and what would totally mess it up? Because I wanted my characters to be married at the beginning. I don't do that very often, and it's a kind of a fun, different trope to explore. And I thought, they think everything is going well. She's perfect. Everything works like clockwork. Da da da. He's got what he's doing. She's got what she's doing. Separate lives. Kids are chaos, and so that's why I wanted to throw the kids in there. And since it's a romance, I wanted it to have a happy ending. So whoever the kids come from, I mean, we all know from the beginning everybody's going to end up happy and together. That's not really the point. The point is the journey.
True.
I don't even remember what I was saying.
You wanted to show like a perfect Regency marriage and then disrupt it by throwing kids into the mix.
By throwing kids into the mix. And so they couldn't just be regular kids. They would have to be special kids. And so we get George and Rose, fresh from the orphanage, who have their own view of life too. And their view of life involves taking care of themselves, firstly. So they steal, they pickpocket, they lie. And I try not to make them ultra precocious. I wanted to make them like real kids. And so they do have, I mean, Rose is 5. She thinks the world is exactly as she imagines it. And she's a princess and she's a pirate and all this other stuff. And George is 8. And he's a little more practical because he's seen more of what the world can do, especially when you're an orphan. But that's kind of the chaos and the heart of everything, is everybody is coming from their own spot way out in the different areas, and they all need to come together in the middle.
And you said it was a bit of a departure from your other books. And, you know, I would think that after 40 novels, personally, I've only written 3. So I'm already like, how do you even come up with material for 40 novels? It's just very impressive to me. Of course, at the same time, I've written enough to know that, you know, the inspiration comes as you go and there's always something new to work through. At the same time, 40 is just an impressive number, and I can understand the desire as an artist to do something different or to grow or to develop. And at the same time, after 40 novels in the same genre, I would think that your readership has very particular expectations about your work. So were you in any way hesitant to go into a new direction, or was your team at the publisher signing it off right away?
St. Martin's was great about it. They said, just, you know, go big, do whatever you want, and we'll see. So I was a little nervous when I first started, because it's not a different voice, but it's just a different kind of writing. And it's closed door, which I haven't written in, 38 books. And that was kind of fun, actually, to not have to worry about the bedroom scenes and stuff, because, I mean, yes, they're emotional and exciting and arousing and all that stuff, but when you're physically writing it, there are only so many things that go in so many places, and there are only so many ways to describe it. And when you write 2 or 3 per book, and we're talking, 40 books, that's a lot of sex. And so it's kind of nice to be able to work around it this time.
But was that a conscious? Sorry.
Oh, no, I was a little worried about it, because my readers do expect more intimate scenes between my characters. And this was a little more surface in that way, but hopefully deeper emotionally. which is
But was that a conscious decision to not have them have a lot of sex, or did that just happen because as you were writing, you felt it wasn't right for the characters? You know what I mean? Sometimes the characters tell you what they need, and if they want to get hot and heavy, then yeah, you're going to go with that,
yeah.
right? Or did you, in this case, actually block them from going?
There was no blocking going on. No.
Okay.
I considered it as I was writing, and as the story was developing, it was just really lighthearted, and it just didn't seem to fit. And so I thought, well, do I need it to tell who these characters are? And then I said, I really don't. And I actually emailed my editor and I said, is it okay if I have closed door romance? And she said, yeah, as long as you do it well. I mean, I'm okay with it. So she ended up being okay with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you normally work closely with your editor, or do they just tell you, run with it, be an artist, be free, and then come back to us with what you have and we're going to take a look?
When I first started working with Monique at St. Martin's, I was doing, 5 or 6 page synopsises and checking in more regularly about how things were going on. But like for the last couple of books I've done with them, I've written like a sentence, big, giant, manly Highlander meets somebody he can't control. And she's like, okay, go. So that's kind of how it goes.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I mean, for this one, I was a little more detailed because it's different, but she was very open to everything. And I would email her when I got stuck on something and needed help story-wise, but that's really about it.
And do you think you're going to keep this direction going forward? Do you think the next one that you're planning is similar in feel, or are you changing direction again? Can you already say a little bit about that?
The next one is written. It's another
Congrats.
kind of madcap caper thing. It's called Bad Dogs and Englishmen, and it's kind of in the same vein. And as long as I'm enjoying it, and as long as people are reading it, which is kind of the most important, then I will keep going for at least another couple of books this way. And I mean, like I went from England to the Highlands for a couple of books, and now I'm going from the Highlands back to England, but kind of a fluffier England. So we'll see. I mean, right now I'm really enjoying it because it's so different.
Oh, we've just had a question come in from Krista. Hi, Krista. And she asks, what has drawn you to write Regency romance?
Probably because I grew up reading them. Georgette Heyer, Jane Ashford. And so the first thing I thought of when I knew I wanted to write. I've known that since I was like 4 and used to type out the exact copy of like Little House on the Prairie, which is plagiarism. Don't do it. But when you're 4, it's okay.
I think that's okay, yeah.
I think you naturally kind of what you enjoy reading is what you're going to enjoy writing, at least when you start out. And it really struck me and I enjoyed it. And so I've kept with it. And I love the Regency period. It's so precise and so different from the rest of the English history. And it's very cool.
It's true, which is why, because I write Victorian era novels, and at the beginning I didn't understand how it worked. They called my work Regency novels, and I was like, no, actually this is not the Regency era. They don't sell it as a Regency because people will be very confused when Queen Victoria literally shows up. And then my editor needed to explain to me that in the States, and I think actually also in France, they market anything that is 19th century as a Regency romance, which always confuses me because it's such a short period of time in
England. I mean, it's only 10 years. Queen Victoria is like 80 years, right? 70, 80 years?
65, I think.
65.
Something like that. Yeah.
I don't know.
And we have a new question, this time from Mary. Thank you, Mary. She asks, do you still read within your writing genre? Do you read while you're writing something? I don't know to whom this question is directed, but I think it's you. So
Do you want to go first,
you?
and then you want to do it, and then I'll answer too?
Sure.
'Cause
So
I'm curious too. I'm curious about you. So
so I have to say that one of the side effects that I did not expect when I started writing professionally was that my reading would go down. I read so much less than I used to before I started writing. And it's a bit sad, but I still do have my comfort reads in my genre that I will reread, also to help me get unstuck when I'm stuck. You know, sometimes you just pick up one of your favorites and you read. I also read books that, you know, I get sent from fellow authors or my publisher. And that's really enjoyable because it's like new stuff that's not even out yet. So I'll read that. And yeah, at the same time, I try to not read too much in my own genre because I don't want to accidentally, you know, cross over. So it can be really refreshing to read contemporary or literary or just biographies, something completely different from what I'm working on.
our answers are very similar because,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, especially when I'm writing, I cannot read Regency anything because I don't want to borrow words or tone or plot or anything like that, even on accident.
Yeah.
And when I'm not writing, it's kind of, I want a vacation from there. So I tend to read, you know, the Game of Thrones type books and stuff like that are totally out of the genre. And I read a lot of research books, although now it's come to where I look for specific things because I've had a background in it for 15 years now. So I only need to know specific things like how much would 3 pounds of beef cost in London in 1818? And so you have to go, you know, look that up. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely read more outside the genre, but not as much as I used to read before I started writing. I just don't have the time.
The time and the mental space.
Yes.
Yeah, I always say words can either go in or out, but both at the same time is tricky.
Yes, exactly.
We have another question, this time from Donald. He asks if either of us have any tips for researching and how much we research before we start writing. So that kind of pertains to what you've just been talking about, that you now have a background in it for 15 years, but how much would you say do you research before you start a new book? Or like, what's the percentage of research time, writing time per book? Do you know?
It's gone conversely. It used at the beginning, it was a lot of research on things because you need to know, because Regency readers know stuff, and they know if the number of spokes on the wheel in the carriage is wrong, and if the harness you have or the bridle the horse is wearing wasn't actually used until the 1850s, and you know, big things like Big Ben wasn't there yet during the Regency stuff. So it started out a lot, and I actually have a huge library of historical stuff, everything from, you know, the history of the toilet to beekeeping during the Regency, and, you know, wheat supplies during the Napoleonic Wars and stuff like that. But now, for most of the background, I know the general stuff, but like for the book I just finished, I had to know, were there poodles in England during the Regency? What did they look like? You know, things like that. And did they have leashes? Did they have collars? And so it gets more minute, I think, as you get further into it, because those are the only questions that you really have left. The rest of it kind of stays as background, hopefully, in your head.
Yeah, that's my experience too, that if you stay in the same universe in the same time period for a while, for a couple of books, certain things become, you know, you can recycle them per book, and the world building becomes more sound because you just keep adding layers. At the same time, as you say, there's tiny details that you don't even know whether you're getting them wrong or not. Like, you might not even be aware that this is something you should be researching, you know, and then, but at the same time, you want to be as accurate as possible. So I'm still at the stage where I do a lot of upfront research, especially since I center my love stories around political events, like actual events that happened in the Victorian era. So the way these events unfold influence my external plot most of the time. So I make sure to research that really in depth. I tend to have surface knowledge about them, and then I just deep dive. And I do that by either reading books on the topic or by going directly to the primary sources as well. In the Victorian era, you have lots more material than in the Regency, I imagine, that's been digitalized and is quite easily accessible for the amateur researcher. For example, you can also call up all the minutes of parliamentary meetings in the 1880s. So I can verbatim quote certain MPs at the time, if I'm talking about because I write about the suffrage movement as well. So I can, tell you who said what about the suffrage movement, about certain decisions. And I love that. I love doing the deep dives with the primary sources, but it does eat a lot of time. I'd say I spend about 30% of my time researching for a novel, and I'll still get stuff wrong in places, like details. Sometimes, I think. Yeah.
Well,
I do try and make sure to put in my author's note if I deviated from something. But
you do your best, but in the end, we're fiction writers. And so
yes.
if you can't find the source of something, but you need something to work for your story, it was not something huge like Big Ben or something.
No.
You could probably get away with it. But, like, were there fluted glasses or were they short stem glasses? I mean, there's probably an answer somewhere, but are we going to find the answer? And is it worth spending 4 days looking for something that's a half a sentence?
No.
Throwaway line. I mean, it kind of comes to a balance eventually.
Exactly. So I usually use a filter system. So when I know that an event was exactly like that, or a quote is exactly like that, or the fashion was exactly like that, I'm of course not going to deviate from it. But where it's blurry or there isn't much detail available, I always ask myself, was it possible? Like, did Big Ben exist at the time? If Big Ben did exist, then I ask the next question. So was it plausible? Would it have been plausible to happen in the context that we have? And if yes, great. And if it's implausible, I can still use it, but I'll probably make clear that this was something special. So
that sounds good to me. I like it.
I also think it's tricky doing research because it usually feels like I'm doing really hard work here. I'm working on my book, but it's also a great procrastination tool.
It's easy to fall down the hole of researching something, and then that leads to something else, and then eventually, if you're lucky, you've got a whole other story idea for the next one.
That's true. So what do you think is special about developing your stories in the Regency setting? I mean, you already said you just enjoyed reading them growing up, but is there anything particular about that time period that is the best setting for telling the stories you like to tell?
I kind of view the Regency as like the Roaring 20s of the 1800s. It's before the more strict dress and stuff for Victorian women and the stricter rules, and you could get away with, if you're a woman, wearing dampened muslin. I mean, so you were a little sexier, and the rules were just a little more lax, I think, because the king was out of the picture and we had the regent, and he was a very arty guy, and it was just a little more free flowing. And people were, especially right after the Napoleonic Wars, people were happy and celebrating and relieved, and it's just like a more up period of time. And it's just fits that kind of genre of the Regency, especially the comedy or the Regency romance.
That sounds good.
How about you? What drew you to the Victorian era?
I think what I liked about the Victorian era is that I have this personal fascination with wanting to understand how intimate relationships work under pressure is maybe the wrong word, but within larger systems that we can't control. I think it's really relevant today, even like thinking about, why are you with someone? Would you be with that person if they were any of the variables about them different? Would you be with them if the climate around you was any different? So basically searching for this true love kind of thing. And in the Victorian era, you had a lot of pressures, very gendered pressures as well, on both men and women. So it's almost like looking at these dynamics under a microscope, almost easier than doing it today, because today is so fuzzy. And so in the Victorian era, it was on the one hand quite constricted and clear cut. At the same time, in the 1880s, you had a lot of the social movements coming into full force, and you had women starting to go to university. You had the first suffragists, doing serious business. So I felt like it was at the same time it was stuffy, and the other hand it really wasn't. There was lots of stuff going on. You just have to focus a bit away from the mainstream and
peel away the layers a little bit.
Yes. And I've read so many great biographies about amazing Victorian women and trailblazers that when you read their thoughts, they could be dropped into today's era and they still would make a lot of sense. And there'd be loads of people today that would be a lot more reactionary in comparison. So I think it's fascinating just to see how certain ideas have been there for a very long time and are not just us writing modern stuff and transporting it into a historical novel. Yeah.
It's stuff that it's existed all along. Yeah. That's cool.
Right. So also I'm seeing that we've been chatting for almost half an hour, and we have taken some questions from the audience. I'm just wondering if there's any more questions, or if we should just finish up any questions we might have between us.
When is your next one coming out?
My next book is coming out in autumn 2023. So,
and it's the same, it's the Victorian setting again. Do you have a title?
Yeah, it's called The Gentleman's Gambit, and it's the last in the series that I wrote. The series is called The League of Extraordinary Women, and The Gentleman's Gambit was supposed to come out a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and I did not finish it on time, so we pushed it back. And then tons of supply chain and paper issues came into it, so we had to push it back even further. So, but it is coming, and yeah, it's the grand finale. So
that's exciting. It's hard to wait that long, but it's exciting.
It is. It is exciting. At the same time, it's a bit sad. I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way when you leave a world behind, because the characters feel so close to me. And then, I mean, of course, once they've fulfilled their purpose, you kind of let them go. But especially when it's the first series you've ever written, I don't know. How did you feel when you said goodbye to your first characters? Was that?
It's gotten easier because it's like you keep it all in your brain for the entire length of the trilogy or quadrilogy, and you're kind of living with these people the whole time, 2 or 3 years, and then you have to let them go. You have to drop them out of your brain before you can start the next thing. And it's kind of a relief, but it's also kind of sad at the same time, because every so often I think, what would so-and-so be doing in this circumstance? It's like, no, we're not writing that story.
Yep.
But
no, I have a feeling that I'll feel the same. It's not helping the speed of finishing up, I would say.
No. How fast do you write? How long does it take you usually to write something?
I'm slow. Yeah. So my publisher Berkeley gives me a year to write a book. So I'm on a yearly schedule. And I know colleagues of mine are able to publish 2 or 2.5 books a year. And I think I understand why Donna Tartt only brings out 1 novel every 10 years. I could easily do that. So, yeah, I'm slow. And I'm also a plotter. So it'll take me a while before I start writing, because I want to map it out. So then my poor editor has to wait a long time for my first draft. But a lot of the time, there are usually not a lot of huge changes to the draft. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you?
I used to write fairly quickly. I could do 2.5 books a year, but I think as I've written more, you don't want to repeat yourself, and each book gets a little harder to write, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I'm going probably about one every 8 months now. Seems to be about my speed. But yeah, like you, I would take forever if I could just keep playing with it and tweaking little words
Oh gosh,
here and
yeah.
there. Yeah.
No, then there definitely has to be a cutoff point. But 8 months is still great in my book. I'm sure your editor's happy. Oh, I also think we have another question from Anna. You both said you get attached to your characters while writing. Do you have any favorites that you think back to more than others or feel more connected to?
I do. I don't know if you, I mean, with 3 books, you don't have as many characters under your belt, but there are those that stick with you. For me, it's the hero from England's Perfect Hero. His name was Robert Carraway, and he was involved in the Napoleonic Wars and tortured and captured and blah, blah, blah. And he has horrible PTSD. And that's probably the book I'm proudest about writing. And I really was proud of the way his character came out. It came out very close to the way I had imagined it in my head before it came down on paper.
That's amazing.
And you, Evie?
I think I'm still so close to my characters because I haven't finished up the series that it's
Right.
very hard to pick favorites, to be honest. I would feel like I tend to say it's like asking me to pick a favorite child. It's quite difficult. Like each of the characters has their own charm for me and brought their own things to the table that were important to me at the time. So I can't really pick at this point, I'm afraid. I think each couple has a unique dynamic so far. And if you ask me maybe in 5 years and I'm still writing, then I think I can give a better answer. Yeah.
That makes sense. Totally makes sense. Especially because they all are living in your head right now. They're still in
yes,
there.
they are. They are. Sometimes I wonder how the people around me deal with that. Because, being present in the present as a writer, when you're really going for it with a book, I find that challenging. I don't know if you feel like you've spent the last 40 books in the days or if you're actually making a clear cut there. I find it hard sometimes to snap out of it.
I do too, especially on deadline when I'm writing more and more longer hours. But I mean, my sisters know that not to say anything to me that they wouldn't mind getting repeated in some fashion in a story somewhere, because even when I'm there, I'm going, oh, that was funny. And it gets stored away somewhere, especially when, my 2 nephews, when they're talking and saying stuff, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Just keeping notes here and there, because it's like you physically can't, you're staying there writing, but in your head, you're not there. You are elsewhere and you are thinking in that world and stuff's going on. And it's kind of schizophrenic in a way, but at least it's semi-controlled, I guess.
I mean, it's also a great place to be for us, right? I love the feeling of being in the zone. That's when the books work best.
The zone is a good place.
Yeah. Have you found it difficult to get into the zone during the last 2 years? A bit with everything around us shutting down. I mean, as writers, we are kind of secluded anyway, so we were probably not as affected in terms of our daily routine. But personally, I felt quite affected by everything going on around me, and I found it difficult. I found it more difficult to get into the zone. Did you?
Yes, it made a big difference, just because it's like when I start to write, I make sure I'm wearing comfortable clothes and I don't really notice anything except what's in my brain. And it's been harder to get those things away.
Mm-hmm.
When COVID was here, it didn't change my life very much because I stayed at home and I wrote, but there were 3 more people at home during the day than there usually were. And there was more stuff going on and more things to keep track of and more things to be aware of. And not just with the COVID, but with the political situation and everything. There's more noise, and it's harder to concentrate and harder to let that stuff go away for a little while.
Yeah, same. I mean, I heard of some authors who said, in the last 2 years, I finally had time and wrote 3 novels. And I'm like, good for you.
Yeah.
No idea how you did
Oh.
that. Share your secret. Yeah. So,
Yes, you are not alone.
but you've already written the next book. Like you brought out Something in the Air today. You've already finished the next novel, and that's an amazing place to be in. So is there something that you think about writing next, or are you taking a long break, or how do your next weeks look like?
I always tell myself I'm taking a break, and then after a week or two, I find myself starting to write notes to myself. I have a couple of ideas, but I haven't really settled on anything yet. I'm finishing up another story that I started about a year ago. That's for me to publish, and we'll see if I can get that done before I start revisions on the one that I turned in August.
All right. So you're doing a hybrid that you publish some of your own stories and you also publish through. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I like being busy.
Well, I'm sure your readers like you being busy too, because they get more stuff to read and more quickly. So
It's good. It works out all the way around.
Yeah, good for them. Sorry, readers. Is there anything else that you would like to let your readers know at this point?
Oh gosh. Something in the Air is available today. It will be it's in the trade paperback size right now, the big one. It'll be in regular mass market in, I think, May. So if you don't want like the big ones, or you want to if you have a lovely collection of Suzanne Enoch books and you want to keep the same book size, then in May, the mass market paperback will be out. And I think the Bad Dogs and Englishmen will be out in about a year. I don't have the exact date yet, but I think it's going to be also like a September, October book. And I can't really think of anything else.
Right. So we can wrap it up if you like. And so you can go celebrate. Are you planning any celebrations for today? Did you put some bubbly or have some cake or going out with friends? What is your celebration on launch day? Do you still do launch day celebrations after 40 novels, or?
No, I don't. I really don't. I mean, maybe I'll have some peanut butter M&Ms or something, but that's not unusual. It's more just getting on with the other stuff and keeping going. Because this is like your child has gone to school, and then you have all the housework to catch up on and all the other notes to finish and the emails you didn't answer and all that stuff. So that's kind of what launch day is now. I let it go. I can't do anything else to fix it. It's gone.
Oh yeah, that's of course something that we deal with from the very first book. So
yes.
Right. So if you're ready, we can hand back over to Shia and the tattered cover.
Hi, Shia.
Hi, Shia.
Thank you, Evie, and thank you, Suzanne. Just so everyone knows, this video will be still available on our YouTube channel later if you'd like to go back and watch it. And you can order Something in the Air on tatteredcover.com. And yeah, thank you for everyone to tuning in. And thank you to Suzanne and Evie again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
All right. So we are not live